afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the last event in the current series of Inspiring Excellence in partnership with Danske Bank. Throughout the series, we're offering you the chance to hear from acclaimed leadership figures who have all something to say about their leadership journey. This has been a really popular series, and today we're delighted to have not one, but two leaders within the Chartered Accountancy profession, Sinead Donovan and Feargal McCormack. Sinead is the Chairperson of Grant Thornton and the incoming President of Chartered Accountants Ireland. Sinead joined Grant Thornton in 2002, became partner in 2005 and was the first female partner. Feargal is Managing Director of FPM, an AAB group company with offices on both sides of the Irish border. Feargal is a leading business figure in Ireland and has held senior leadership roles across a range of organisations, including President of our Institute, Chartered Accountants Ireland, in 2018 to 19. Today, we'll discuss and hear a little bit about their career journeys, their leadership philosophy, and the key issues that they see facing the accountancy profession. I'll be here to put questions to Sinead and Feargal, and we're also really keen to have your input. So for those that are familiar with our series, please do get involved and ask some questions using the question and answer facility at the bottom of your screen. Before we get started though, I'd really like to acknowledge the important partnership that we have with Danske Bank. This partnership enables us to bring series like this to our members, and all for free. Danske has been an important partner for the Ulster Society for many, many years, and we are truly thankful for their continued support. Without further ado, I would like to pass to Fiona King to give her a little introduction on behalf of our sponsor, Danske. Over to you, Fiona.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Fiona King, Corporate Banking Manager in Danske Bank. And on behalf of Danske Bank, I am delighted to welcome you here today to hear from Sinead and Feargal, both renowned leaders in our profession. At Danske Bank, our partnership with the Ulster Society is incredibly important to us as we support our customers and local communities deliver on their ambitions. So, without further delay, I will hand back over to Emma, and I really hope you all enjoy the session.
Thanks, Fiona, and thanks again to Sinead and Feargal for taking the time to be with us here today. It's great to have the both of you here in person. So let's get started. Maybe we'll kick off, Feargal, with you and a little bit of your career journey.
Well, my life, I suppose, has been a journey of learning and leadership experiences. And I went to Queen's, got an economic degree at Queen's, and then subsequently did the postgraduate accountancy diploma, joined KPMG, many happy days in KPMG, and at a manager level was seconded then to IDB, which is the fee runner, to invest in and I still think for my sins, I'm perhaps the youngest principal officer. They said, I always said it was my weight at 26, but there you go. And but I always had a desire to set up my own business. So IDB was a phenomenal experience for me. I was fortunate to visit and work in 4 continents before I was 30. But at 31, I set up my own business in August, and no clients and part-time secretary. But thankfully, since that, many people have helped me along the way, and then we now have 10 partners or 10 equity directors, and we merged with AAB last May, and I've had a lot of luck on the way and a lot of rewarding experiences as well.
Fantastic journey spanning an extremely long period, but great insight just in terms of your start in IDP. So Sinead, over to you.
Yeah, so I got into accountancy straight from school. I was one of those people that knew she really wanted to be an accountant, so I jumped into it straight from school and qualified by the age of 21, so I'm coming up to my 30th year in the profession, which is a bit scary. I trained in a small firm, and I really recognised that training in a small firm. And then I progressed in. I was in Arthur Andersen for a couple of years in Dublin and Sydney, which was a phenomenal environment to learn in. A really tough but transparent environment, very competitive, which I love. Spent about 5 years in industry. In Elan Corporation, which was really good to see it from the other side. But then I was drawn back into the lure of practice and dealing with clients. And so joined Grant Thornton, as you say, in 2002. The journey with Grant Thornton has been phenomenal. The growth in the firm, when I joined in 2002, we were a 9-partner practice, and we're now 70 partners and over 3,000 staff. So it's been a real journey. I think allied to that has been my journey in the Institute. The Institute is in my blood. My dad was past president, and so from day one I was involved in the Institute. And I have grown in my time in council. I've witnessed and been mentored by past presidents like Feargal, and learned an awful lot from them. So I'm looking forward to my year immensely in May.
Another busy year to come, no doubt, and that will take its own leadership in itself. So we're here today to talk a bit about leadership and get a bit of insight from our two guests today. So maybe if I can pose a question to both of you, how would you describe your leadership style? And if you did, why did you choose it?
Well, not often a man goes first, but Emma, if you're looking at me, I'll go first. Well, very simple, people-centred. My first ever speech was to the Ulster Society in Sinead Donovan back in November, I think, 1981, and I was the so-called keynote speaker at a student event. I chose the title, "I don't care how much you know, until I know how much you care." And I'm more convinced today, 30 plus years later, that's what business and indeed life is all about. So I think it's people-centred. And from that, obviously, you complement with other skills as you go along and people around you. But it's all about people.
What about you, Sinead?
Yeah, look, I have to say, I probably feel I'm still learning. I'm learning every day. I think my leadership style has changed from being, probably when I was younger, more directive, to now being a little bit more authentic. And when I say authentic, I mean being completely authentic of who I am and bringing myself to work so that I can hopefully share some of my life experiences in the way that I can try and lead a team. So I think, as Feargal says, it's about the people, but to me, it's about the people, and it's about sharing my experiences with them so that they can, maybe I can teach them something, and lead by example. I don't believe it's about directive, and I think that's something that I have learned hugely. It's not giving directions, it's leading by example, and really trying to identify the values and the core values that team need to have, and build everything around those values.
Yeah, and you used a word there, authentic, and that's something that would really resonate with me, because I do ultimately think that good leadership comes from being the person that you are and not pretending to be someone or what someone else expects you to be. But I think coming with that, there's always someone or something that inspires you. Anything particular that you could draw out from an inspiration perspective, Sinead?
There's been a lot that I have learned on my journey. There was one as I was driving up the road, and I'm not just saying this because Feargal was sitting beside me, but Feargal taught me a lot, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about an incident, Feargal, if that's okay, from the past. When I first joined council, it was back in 2005. And at that stage, I was pushing hard. I was a new partner. I had ambitions in the Institute. I was on council, and I was also, trying to start a family, and that happened in 2008. And I remember at the time, I think it was about that time, Feargal, you actually made a very brave and wise decision and stepped off council. Now, I didn't know at the time why. I heard on the grapevine that it was for, personal reasons. And I remember thinking, wow, that's phenomenal, because Feargal was obviously going to be a president and he was going to be a leader, and I hugely admired him. Feargal then obviously stepped back in and became one of our, what I would say is one of our strongest and most member-centric presidents. But what I learned from that was that at various times in your life, you need to toggle. You need to toggle your personal responsibilities and you need to toggle your professional responsibilities. And that enabled me in 2010 to say, do you know what? And there was a chance that maybe if I'd gone for officer group at that stage, I might have got it. But do you know what? I'm not going to give it the best. I'm not going to be able to. I have 2 young kids. I'm a partner. I'm not going to be able to give it my best. And I actually stepped off council at that stage. I stepped back from my professional career a little bit, which gave me the time to regroup and then step back in. So it's little things like that along the way that you learn from experience. And thank you, Feargal, for giving me that.
What about you, Feargal?
Yeah, well, I think you always look at people that inspire you. My first boss was a guy called a very legendary character. He's still living, Dr. Ben Wilson, and he was inspirational. And some people found him very tough, but I never found him tough. The small things were important. Ben would have known if you had a bereavement or anything else. Ben would have been at your house. You wouldn't have known it. Some hour of the night, Ben would have arrived. So, yeah, along the road, and I must say, like Sinead, I gained a lot from working in the institute or volunteering in the institute. And I just think small things. And, outside, I suppose, outside of accountancy, Dr. Martin Naughton, Glenn Dimmock has always been a person I've admired in many, many forms of what he's did. And, I think you always need mentors as well. I mean, I've always been one, by the way. I have mentors at present. I'm always keen to learn. I have these two mentors at present. And I've always had mentors at different mentors at different times in my life.
Feargal, in the end of talking about his inspirational piece, was talking about a number of individuals who've inspired him along the way, but also had alluded to the fact of the importance of having mentors, and still has a number of mentors. So for those of us who do know Feargal and see his leadership so vibrant and consistent, it is very heartwarming to see the importance that he places on having actually mentors. So we're always learning. Leadership's always changing. We're always getting challenges like our IT glitch here to put us off our path. But the show must go on. Speaking of challenges, leadership does always bring its ups and downs. Rather than getting into kind of the challenging end of it for now, maybe start about some of the joys, the biggest joys that you've had as a leader.
Ooh, the joys that you have as a leader. I mean, I think to me, it's when there's success within the team. I set up a team in Grant Thornton 10 years ago, the FAS team, Financial Accounting and Advisory Services. And that was 12 people at the time to service the multinational community. We didn't know, we had a vision, we didn't have a journey, but we celebrated 2 days ago our 10th anniversary. And we're now a team of 350 with over 26 nationalities in it. And that to me is the celebration. It's the diversity within the team. It's the ability to have ideas bouncing off you and creativity. So that to me is something special. It was an idea, it was an embryo, and it grew to something now 10 years later, which is really, I think, making a difference to the firm.
Yeah, and similar to Sinead, I would say that, was it St. Francis who said, "Is in giving you receive," and I think at the door to happiness looks outwards. And I think whenever you see somebody who joined you and where they've gone to, you're observing, long even after they've left your firm, perhaps, where they've gone to, and equally in terms of clients, client experiences, client satisfaction. So to me, you're always trying to serve, but in the course of caring and serving, you do get a lot of satisfaction from seeing benefits that other people perceive they receive from your team. It's a good teamwork.
Yeah, and Feargal, you've already mentioned quite a lot about people and being people-centric. Sinead, you've talked a little bit there about celebrating the diversity, and that is a big topic in terms of the importance of diversity, be that diversity in background, diversity of perspective, and certainly something that we all need to be focused on as we go forward as leaders. And sometimes that it's quite hard to change, and it's quite hard to embrace that if we're all being honest about it. But when we're all working in businesses that don't survive without employees, and the war for talent is quite significant. When you're out recruiting for an employee, what are the kind of key qualities that you're looking for?
Well, I don't think you can turn the clock off at 5 o'clock. So I'm always looking for somebody who's a team player outside work, who's a carer, a volunteer. I'm looking for somebody who's the secretary, the chairperson, or the team leader, or whatever, because I think you can then translate that back into a work environment. So extracurricular activities, I have to admit, not putting people off studying, but if you want to know the truth, the first place I go to when I lift a CV is straight to the extracurricular activities, because at the end of the day, people have to do business with people. And you're always looking for people who will be willing to do that, also embracing change. I mean, we've all had to embrace, and it's great. But anybody who thinks you're not going to embrace change, and we don't know what's happening tomorrow, they have a limited future. So somebody who's willing to be flexible, and I think the point you made, 15 goalkeepers never won a match. You need diversity, you need inclusion, and without doubt, one of the things I think I learned from being honest initially, from being involved outside accountancy, was that actually I got far more satisfaction from working in multidisciplinary environments, and learned far more, believe it or not, from quite often the institute committees, when you're working with people and you see leadership at different levels, people coming from different perspectives. So I think diversity and inclusion are also fundamental to getting the ultimate team you need to go forward.
Completely agree with that. And I mean, I'd be very similar to Feargal in that I quite often look for sporting endeavours or team or whatever it may be on CVs. I think that personally, I love someone in an interview if they kind of challenge me. I love seeing that, this kind of monologue of yes or no coming back to me. You can kind of go really, but if you can really see somebody not coming at you, but see that their true spirit, then that's usually a tick for me.
I had someone once who I was interviewing, when you give them the option for a question at the end, asked me where I saw myself in the next 5 years. I hadn't quite worked it out, so we had a bit of a debate on that one at the end of the interview. And Feargal, how do you think that leaders can ensure that they have actual leadership throughout their organisation? So it's all very well having a very strong, dynamic character with it all sussed, as they say at the top, but how do you ensure that you're embedding that throughout the organisation?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think leadership is a hierarchical thing. I think you need leaders at all levels of the organisation. And I think one of the ways, I've always held the view actually, that internal communications are far more important than external. Transparency. And your staff are your ambassadors or your assassins. So if the leaders aren't coming through, and you don't want stereotypes. The last thing you want is yes people. You want those people bringing. So I think the way to be up front is, number one, internal communications. Number two, expect leaders at all levels of the organisation through example. And number three, we certainly would encourage a thing called, all our agendas are a thing called OFIs, opportunities for improvement. Every meeting, OFIs. And some of the best ideas we have ever got, take it from me, sometimes it's the toilet paper, somebody wants better toilet paper, but ultimately some of the other suggestions are absolutely phenomenal. And some of our best ideas have come from OFI. So I think it wasn't the sum of all of us is far better than individuals. So I think try and encourage everybody to take leadership.
And Sinead, as incoming institute president, no job too small, what do you see as some of the key challenges that the profession is facing?
Yeah, gosh, I'm kind of taking over the baton at an interesting time. Look, the key challenge for us at the moment is the attractiveness of the profession, and it's not just here in Ireland; it's a global phenomenon. The numbers, it's no secret, but the numbers entering the profession globally are going down. There was quite a stark statistic over the last while that 300,000 people have left the profession in America over the past, I think it was 5 years, but that's a huge number to leave the profession, and that then combined with the number of students that are falling. Now, our market share as the Institute of Chartered Accountants is growing, which is phenomenal, but it's a growing market share in a declining total population. So that to me is the biggest thing, and look, that's not something that I can do on my own, or that even the Institute can do on their own. It is very much a global issue. It is there still, to me, I feel and fear is a perception about what accountants are. I think that perception is still a little bit grey, male, stale. Apologies, Feargal, but you've never been in that bracket, or the male. I'm the grey. But we got to kind of change that perception as well, because to me, I mean, I'm passionate about the profession. It does open so many doors, and it does open so many routes. But we got to try and get that across. And so, look, yeah, attractiveness of the profession is the number one issue at the moment.
I think the passion piece from both of you comes out quite strongly. You wouldn't do all that you do if you weren't passionate about it. What does motivate you? What motivates you, and what, I suppose, on the flip side, demotivates you at times?
Well, I'd say what motivates me is I enjoy empowering people, and that has always been, working with people. So I've never sold any. I've tried to help people, and sometimes that has created business. I've been lucky. So yeah, I think the day I don't love work, I won't go to work. I'd be upfront about it. I love it. And I think that's what you want other people to be honest, but you want them to be in an environment that they love it. I also think, and I come back to a point that Sinead makes, I think is fundamental. It's one we all as accountants certainly need to get out there. I can't think of any profession that offers you the diversity of opportunity. And I think we really need to keep highlighting that, because no matter how much we highlight it, if you get into an honest conversation, quite often the perception is you need to do accounts at 14 or accounts at 16, and you're going to be in an office all day. And whilst the Institute is doing a very good job about profiling where people are now, I think we should still do that more and more and get it back into the schools, because I think there's no better foundation. But we all acknowledge, you're only starting when you qualify. You've then got to add on experience. So yeah, I'm always motivated, in being honest with you, as an individual, by just helping others. I think that I've always had that philosophy. It's amazing. You help others, you get a lot of satisfaction. I'm
maybe not quite as altruistic as Feargal, and I don't love my job every day. But I think what motivates me is it's probably an innate sense of almost competition and drive. So to me, and that's a self motivation that I always want to be challenging myself, pushing myself, and accountancy has given me the ability to do that and step outside my comfort zone in the institute, in the firm. Now step outside my comfort zone in leadership roles like the president, which is still a bit of a pinch me moment when I think about it. So that is my self driver. I think as you then get into leadership roles, you are driven by seeing other people come up behind you. And I've been lucky enough to sponsor two younger directors to partnership in the firm recently, and that's amazing. That's really amazing when you see people who were your managers getting through to partnership and getting right through to equity partnership. And that really is, you kind of think, okay, that's the full circle now, and that keeps me driving on as well.
And that takes energy, and it takes focus, and ultimately passion that we talked about. The roles that you both have are demanding maybe in slightly different ways. You volunteer with the Institute, it's fair to say, and that takes up quite a significant amount of time. Everyone, you have your families, other activities outside of work. What does work-life balance mean for you? Conscious, Feargal, that you talked about the people that are also on clubs and committees. I'm a great believer in work-life balance, but I don't believe, as I said earlier, you can turn the clock off at 5 o'clock. I certainly love my family. I hope my family have not lost out. As Sinead referred to earlier, I'm a severely autistic child, which brings its own challenges. But I don't think I've missed any family event virtually in 62 years. So I believe I bring my family to work when I need to, in terms of family life. I don't mean physically, and equally, if appropriate, I bring my work to home. But I think you can achieve a balance. But I think it is really important that you work at that. And I don't think, and I acknowledge at times stress can come in, and that's not just as easy as sitting on a chair now saying it. But I think if you pause and go back again, because the one thing I have learned, and it took me a long time to learn this, that I think you have to look after yourself first. But like the mother or the father with the child on the airplane, the oxygen mask, put your own on first. And to be upfront about that's a weakness I probably had. And I think actually to be best at home and to be best at work, you have to be a little bit selfish with yourself first of all, care-wise. So that's the one thing I'd say. But after that, I'm all on for work-life balance. But I think I probably say it's joined up. It interacts.
I certainly have not cracked it yet, and I struggle with it every day. What I am trying to address or come to comfortable with is I can't do everything to 100%. I can't. And when I made that acceptance maybe 10, 15 years ago, that probably helped me because, okay, so now I've got to make the choice. There may be some nights that when the kids were younger, maybe some nights that I'm not going to get home to get the kids to bed. There may be some nights that I can't go to an event in the firm. You definitely have to make those choices. That's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I say to enable you to have a bit of a work-life balance or have a work-life balance is ask for help. and have a team around you that you can call on. I was the ultimate control freak who didn't want that. And no, I can cook all the meals and I can do all that and I can do. And you know what? Now I have an army, and that's the only way. And that makes everyone happier. Makes me happier. Makes my kids happier. Makes hopefully my work team happier. So ask for help.
I think really very, very important. And just reflecting on that, and that's maybe something that has come with experience. What's the kind of one thing that you wish someone had told you along your career journey?
I'm not sure something jumps out. It maybe just don't panic, pause that a little bit. That literally within your own ability and seeking advice very quickly, you can resolve most issues. I think maybe don't panic. But other than that, I don't think there's one thing stands out other than enjoy it. I think the day you don't enjoy it, I mean, you have to work on it. Go and do some other work, but you've got to enjoy it. Bring fun and enthusiasm around.
You spend so much time at work. You have to get something out of it, absolutely.
I'll answer that probably slightly differently. I had two things that I was constantly told when I was younger, and I thought I kind of brushed them aside and thought it was rubbish. I now realise it was the best advice. The two things were, and they both came from my father, was, Sinead, you need time to think. And I remember when I was a 25-year-old ambitious accountant thinking, well, Dad, if I had time to think, that means I'm not doing, which means I'm wasting time. So, don't be so stupid. I now realise what he meant. You need time to formulate your thoughts, to think problems out, to have time to yourself. Now that for me is not putting 2 hours into the diary of thinking time, but it's maybe, as I drove up the road today, to turn off the radio or not have calls in the diary. So that's the first thing. And the second thing was, don't take on every battle. And I remember again as a hungry 25-year-old saying, but if I believe in something, I've got to fix it. I've got to go in and solve it. And he was like, no, Sinead, pick your battles and pick them wisely. And that would be, and I suppose it's only now that as I look back, I go, yeah, do you know what? That was wise advice. I didn't take it at the time, but I'm trying to take it a bit now.
So in the world of not everything is always rosy, leadership always throws that curveball and challenge. What has been maybe one of your biggest challenges to date, and how did you overcome it?
That's a tough one. By the way, I have to say, I first agree with Sinead's last comment. I think that I should have said working on the business rather than in the business distinguishes. You've got to pause. There is a separate thing. COVID, I think, brought a challenge, maybe a fear for a few days. But again, that was the team around you, and probably in hindsight, you learn far more from your challenges or your mistakes than you do really from your successes. So I think, if I'm being honest, one would never wanted COVID from a business perspective, but I think I learned a lot from it. And yeah, I'd say the first week or two of COVID, I was wondering what's going to happen, or first day of marriage. But thankfully, I think we learned a lot from it, and more importantly, I think we've come out of it a better business. So I think COVID taught me a lot. Other than that, I suppose the challenges we all get now and again, people now and again, I mean, we talk about people being great, but you can also have individuals, and those personalities that now and again that maybe you haven't dealt with as well as you should have, or you ask yourself at a second moment, could I dealt with this differently? And I'm sure on some occasions you could have, but individual personalities put it down again. But thankfully, the good is always outweighed the bad.
Lucky you. Brilliant.
I think my biggest challenge to date, I kind of alluded to it earlier, was as a mid-career, when I had two young kids, I was a new partner. I was on the council of the institute. I was soaring professionally, but probably personally was struggling to keep everything afloat. And I tried to battle on and put that tough exterior on and put that mask on, and I did it for a while. And then I took what I think was what I know was the right decision at the time, to take a bit of a step back. And that was scary, because you didn't know if you were going to be able to step back in. And you kind of thought, well, gosh, all these things that I've worked so hard for now, I'm giving up. I'm giving up management committee. I'm giving up the council. I'm giving up. But But that was the biggest challenge for me, and thankfully, it was the right thing to do for me, for my family, and ultimately, I think, for my career, because I now possibly am a little bit more mature, a little bit more forgiving to some extent, to be able to take on some of these new roles.
Would you say, Sinead, that's one of the biggest risks that you've taken in your career, or is there anything else that springs to mind?
It probably was one of the bigger long-term risks that I took. It probably was, because it really was scary, because you didn't know, and it was hard, because as you took that step back and you saw peers in the firm maybe, overtaking you, for want of a better word, and you kind of thought, well, that should have been me, and that was really hard. And you had to try and not get bitter about it or beat yourself up. But then that enabled me to give myself time to become a bit stronger, to be able to step back in stronger. So was it a risk? I did see it at the time as a risk, but probably now with the benefit of hindsight, it wasn't a risk. It was the right thing.
I think we're naturally seen as quite a risk-averse cohort of people, but leadership doesn't come without its risks. Looking at you, Feargal.
You have to take risks. The person never took risks, never got anywhere. But you have to also realize in taking them, some don't work, but don't worry about it. Move on.
An example of what maybe was what you perceived to be one of your bigger risks?
Well, I suppose, to be honest, you're probably setting up was my biggest risk, because if you notice my background, I went from Big Four and happy into government. So when I came out, I had no plans. So literally, I used to buy a newspaper at the front of the shop and walk back and tell everybody I was very busy and go back and read the paper. So it was networking 30 years ago. But the point I'm saying is, yeah, in hindsight, that probably was the biggest risk. But after that.
So we've heard quite a bit already this afternoon about, and got a flavour of the type of leadership that leaders you believe you are. If I was to do a straw poll or do a walk around
don't say you have.
In Grant Thornton, no, I absolutely haven't. But I might.
No.
If I was to do a walk around in Grant Thornton, what type of leader might your team describe you to be?
I think the words, and let's go with some of maybe the more negative words that might be used, is probably tough, relentless, hard, but I like to try and balance that with then, fair. I would like to think they would say empathetic, in that I am trying to bring some of my life experiences to. So, for example, some of the mid-career women in my team, I understand the challenges they're going through. So yeah, I would hope they would use the word, if I had to think of two words, tough but fair.
What about FPM, AAB?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I don't know. Someone might say I eat my way around, that everything is around a cup of coffee or a breakfast or a lunch.
So that's literally.
And I think one of the things is that, yes, I do like to create constructive debate. So I like a bit of debate. So I'm being honest with you, because I learn from debating. So I do try to create a situation where I like to get 3 or 4 or 6 people in the room at the one time and purposely maybe throw a few balls in the room. So it maybe takes a wee while for people to understand that.
And I can tell from sitting in council meetings where Feargal was chair, that's exactly how he did.
But yeah, no, look, I don't know, but we do actually a weekly staff pulse survey. Weekly, yes. And certainly I can assure you, people are more than willing and more than willing to share comments, because they know that they listen to, and not say we agree, but we get it. And we brought that in 2015. I'd say that's probably. I love it. A lot of people maybe don't like it, but I do like it, because I think really you can hear it. It's amazing what comes back and that type of thing. So
it strikes me the week's quite a short period of time to actually have moved anything on to the next one. But
when you only ask one question.
One question.
How's it going? And you have an opportunity to put in a comment. A lot of people wouldn't put in a comment, but when they feel something strong, they would put in a comment.
So it's kind of then traffic lights, like they're
1 to 10. You just give us a score, and then it's all anonymous. So it's something great, nothing or summer. Give the results every Friday evening. 6 o'clock.
Temperature check.
Yeah.
Fine, even at 6 o'clock after they've had a few beers. It's a good time.
No.
He sends it out at
The
halfway.
results, no, he doesn't have the results come in at 5 o'clock on a Friday evening, but there you go.
And how do you, so that's clearly encouraging honest, open dialogue. Do you think you would get that flavour of dialogue and honesty of feedback if you didn't have the survey?
I don't think the survey is the answer to all things, but look, different people, everybody's different styles. I'm sure at times, I frustrate people because I'm always sort of saying, where's the fire in your belly? Where's the hustle? But I mean, having said that, within reason, I think people make their own judgments, and you definitely learn. I mean, I can tell you, I listen. It wouldn't be that I wouldn't take it in the chin and say something maybe at the time, but I am listening, and I'll go back and learn from.
Reflector. It is very important, I suppose, in that moment to listen and be present. So be present in your day job, or be present in the environment that you're in, or the capacity that you're working within. How do you manage to do that while also trying to plan for the future in a world that isn't staying still, both actually or in your mind?
That's a tough question, but I think it comes back to something Sinead said earlier on. I referred to Martin Naughton, and I was fortunate to sit in a boardroom for about 6 or 7 years, and he had two great sayings. He probably doesn't realise he ever had them, but he must have said them nearly every meeting at some stage. One was, if you can't delegate, you're a nuisance. And secondly, innovate or evaporate. And to answer your question, I think if you think you're going to do something on your own, you can forget about it. So literally, from the culture must be the glue. You must all of a sudden create that team spirit and the spirit that people feel free, no matter what level they are in the organisation, to come forward and say we should do that. I think if you do that, you should always. We can't control what happens around us, but we can control our response. And I think we can have confidence in our team, and that's where it comes out. So I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I am very confident that whatever happens, we'll deal with it. It takes a day or two, it takes a month or two, but we deal with it.
But to deal, and I completely agree with Feargal, but to be able to deal with issues like that, I do think it's really issues that come up that leaders have the time to navigate them. So when I look back at maybe periods where my leadership style did not, or my leadership did not work, it's when you don't have the time to deal with problems that come to you. Because if you don't have the time to deal with them, those problems then become conflict and they become barriers. So leaders do need time to navigate the issues when they come, and the team need to know that the leaders will give them the time to work out those issues with them. And I think that's critical for all leaders, is that they carve out enough time to enable. It comes back to the time to think as well. It all comes back to that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a major learning I've certainly picked up. I wouldn't jump in on a major issue now. Actually, I deliberately would sleep on it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have done that 20 years ago, but I definitely would sleep on it now. Because I don't think, I think you can wait that pause of whatever it is, 12, 24, 40. It will not make a massive difference, actually. Probably better if you talk to a few people in between. So for major issues, I do think just pause a second.
It's like the old save to draft. Don't get the caps. Immediately written email as a gut reaction, reflect and see would you send it. So we've been posing some quite tricky questions to Sinead and to Feargal. So really encourage you to come forward with some of your own questions. I have a few more up my sleeve. We have one that has just come in here, and that's talking about as a leader, you sometimes have to give news that is not as welcome as others. So it's quite easy to be a leader when everything's going okay and you're going to give news about a fantastic promotion or, for example, in this case, a pay rise. How have you found it being a leader when the news isn't quite so good, and how to that balance with team morale and keeping everyone on board for the next stage of the journey?
Well, this is one I certainly have learned from over the years. 20 years ago, a trainee came in that probably I would have persevered, or a new member of staff came in, I would have persevered far longer than I should have. I think, to be honest with you, I've now learned, rightly or wrongly, you're far better having that conversation very early, and being open and honest and saying, look, maybe I'm wrong, but this is our perspective. We're not saying out the door immediately, but let's agree. Next 4 weeks, next 6 weeks, this is what we want to see, and the both parties. So I think it demotivates staff if you don't deal with the person, because if you take even in all our environments and offices, if somebody thinks somebody's weak and they go to their colleague all the time, so the person who's weak can go home and study all night and no worry about work or whatever. So I think it can be demotivating. That's something I didn't learn early enough, but I'd say certainly, I think we ask a simple question in 3, GWC, do people get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity to do the job? And to be honest, if we don't have the 3 ticks, we immediately talk to them. That wouldn't have been the case 10 years ago.
GWC, there you go. This is a new brand.
It's from a book called Traction. Get it?
You're not claiming the rights to that one.
The capacity to do it. And basically, we use that for all recruitment, and we use that for all staff places.
Yeah, look, I mean, completely agree with Feargal. I would say, just don't fudge the difficult conversations. They're not pleasant, but the longer you leave them, and the longer you kind of push them under the carpet, the worse they will get. And it's no good for anyone. I think the other thing is that in those conversations, what I found was you need to be really transparent and really focused on what you're saying, because by definition, they're usually highly charged and people are not necessarily going to hear what you are saying. So you need to be quite clear, concise, and then give them time to either say it back or but whatever it may be. But I mean, yeah, it's them the compassion to be able to hear it.
And how important, so not everything goes well, but how important is it to kind of acknowledge things that haven't gone so well and then learn from it?
Hugely. I mean, I think that's, we're all learning the whole time and we're all making mistakes, but mistakes are not something, in my eyes, to be given out about. Mistakes are absolutely learning opportunities. Now, if you make that mistake twice or 3 times, that's when you may get a little bit of a ticking off. But mistakes are learning opportunities, and everybody needs to, and that's where leadership is really crucial. Everybody needs to look at those mistakes and say, what are the learnings? And sometimes if they happen with clients, unfortunately, you've got to hold up your hand and say, this has happened. Let's be really upfront about it. This is why it's happened. This is how we solved it. And this is what we're doing now in the future to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, certainly. I think one of the key ingredients of any leadership or culture organization is humility. How can we do things better? And certainly, if you create a fear of tension, that won't get you anywhere. You have to allow people. I mean, it's one of the great things I think about the accountancy profession training is you learn. Irrespective, it's the more senior person ultimately must take the responsibility if it goes wrong. But the truth is, you have to encourage that type of environment. Now, I think that is important, but I think there's also accountability with it. That as Sinead says, you wouldn't expect somebody to make the same mistake 2 or 3 times. But I think the whole idea of a learning, what can we do better, continuous improvement, I think that's key in culture in any organisation.
Yeah, and dare I say, there's an integrity piece with it too, that if something hasn't gone so well, you do acknowledge it, you do put your hand up, you don't try to bluff it off, you come forward with it.
Well, there was a guy called Paddy Fitzpatrick's Hotels in Dublin, and he's now dead permanently. There's family stuff, but he used to say that actually took him a long time to realise, but his best business came from his mistakes. So whenever somebody put a complaint in the hotel, he got in the car, he drove to their house, and he said quite often that became their most loyal customer in years to come.
That's how they were treated at a personal level, and you acknowledged it?
He asked him, Sinead said, put his hands up and said, what can we do better? And he said, once people talk, I think once you're open enough, it's amazing what can happen.
It's funny. I mean, I always look at leadership as well in my role as a parent, and this very much kind of links into what I say to my 2 girls is, you're not going to get into trouble for anything, not forever, but you're not going to get into immediate trouble if you tell me the truth. You will get into trouble if I find you haven't been telling me the truth, but if you tell me the truth, we will pause, we will work it out together, but you're not going to get into trouble for telling the truth. And that's the same with business as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you know yourself, if you go into a shop or a restaurant and you have a complaint about someone and someone acknowledges it, but they kind of put you on the back foot a little bit. So then you just deal with, well, they handle that quite well. But if they handle it poorly, then you just get more and more annoyed about it. One of the questions we have is around the ability to demonstrate leadership in this. You talked about the challenges that COVID brought, Feargal, in this sort of new hybrid world that we're working in, and the qualities that come out through our leadership in that. And is that the only acceptable way going forward?
No, I think anybody who doesn't say we must always embrace change and pick up better practice and better ideas and do them. And I think in terms of flexibility, it doesn't mean we do less. It means we redesign things to create a more sustainable future. And within that will be talent and technology and balancing them. And I mean, it would be something wrong. Maybe COVID brought it slightly further pace-wise, but there'd be something wrong if we weren't always embracing those ideas. And certainly, I think it's all about testing, learning, and if people are the right people, if the technology is the right technology and it's changing, well, you just keep working with it and try and get balance. But ultimately, the coming together of talent and technology will deliver a lot of positives.
And I think it is up to leaders now to get the best out of the hybrid working environment and not default back to the comfort zone of get everyone back into the office. And one thing that I learned, I was down in ATU, Atlantic Technology University, a few weeks ago, and we were chatting to the students, and somebody asked this very question about hybrid working and getting back into the office. And I said, that there is extremes, and some people want everyone back in the office, and some people want flexible. And to me, I'm happy with the flexible so long as the output is still there. But somebody came up to me afterwards, and it was a really good lesson to me. And he said, is there any chance if this ever comes up again that you would say the opportunity that flexible working has given to some of the marginalised members of our community? So, for example, people with disability or people with other challenges, because that has enabled them to get into the workforce in a way that they didn't before. And I went, wow, thank you for coming up and saying that to me. And absolutely, I will bring that to my firm, and I will bring that to the profession, because I think that's something that as leaders we need to look at, the opportunity that we can increase the diversity in our workforce by using some of the learnings that COVID has brought us.
Yeah, I think the day of presenteeism and being at a desk from a certain time to a certain time and having a set period for lunch is absolutely behind us. I think the new world takes trust, but I think it does bring the advantages that come and a loyalty that comes with having the flexibility to your day and a better output ultimately, but equally recognising the times when you do have to be together and things are easier and better in a face-to-face environment. Leadership can be seen as a lonely place sometimes. Keen to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes if you have difficult decisions to make, but to me, maybe I'm lucky being in a partnership. There's 70 leaders. And I have the ability to bounce things off other partners. Certainly in the institute, you're never on your own. You've got the officer group around you, you've got the CEO with you, you've got all the directors with you. So actually, I think if you become a lonely leader, there's something wrong, because one person doesn't have all the answers. So I think if you're beginning to get lonely, then maybe you need to question yourself as to why.
Probably back to your earlier point about asking for help.
Yeah, I think that's right, because I think, to be fair, in most organisations now, if you haven't discussed that type of thing with people at the top of small, you leave yourself very exposed. You may be the individual to communicate the message, but the truth is, I think you should have consulted before you do the decision.
Thank you very much. Any last minute questions? We'll be absolutely dying to hear them. But we're probably coming towards the end of our session here today. And maybe just to try and leave you with a few final thoughts from both Feargal and Sinead. So I suppose if you could give your top 3 things for what you've seen as successful leadership what would they be?
Oh, I think definitely have a vision and dream, but don't be afraid to change it, and have great resilience. And I keep saying, enjoy.
Yeah, and to me, I mean, the top three things is, one is be authentic, bring your full self to work, bring your life experiences to the role. 2, be transparent, and that's transparent with your team, with feedback, but also be open to being transparent in how you listen to people. And then 3, try and build in the time to navigate the curveballs that are gonna come your way. And the day that I manage to do those 3 things, I will let everyone know, because I certainly haven't managed it yet.
Maybe monetize it.
Yeah.
It really is a learning day. I can assure you, there's no complaints to say.
So it just remains for me to thank you both very much for giving up your time to join us today, for being so open and honest in terms of your own reflections and the advice, and sharing your own individual career journeys with us. Thanks to everyone who has joined us online for today's webinar and continues to join us for our series of wide range of events that we host here from an Ulster Society perspective. Thanks again to our sponsor, Danske Bank, who enable us to run events like this. For those who haven't been able to join us, or if you do want to watch it again and get a rerun of our technical glitch, a recording will be available, and we will share it with you all afterwards. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.